Welcome, it's SVPod. Stanford Steve joins us from Green Bay. Red is in the building, chasing a toy that Oscar and Shannon brought up. Thank you very much for that. It's a special Sunday morning playoff reaction pod. Steve, hello.
Hi, buddy. How are you?
I know you're tired. I know you're cold. I know you've got layers. There are many layers that have been required. South Bend Friday, Columbus Saturday, Lambeau currently.
Yeah, I had to check a bag just for winter stuff. Wasn't happy. But
You'd have been a whole lot unhappier if you were out there with no layers. It looked cold. It looked cold.
It was cold. I was warm.
There you go. We did, I don't know, I'm sure you didn't see it. We did do best available video of you with you had the head sock on in South Bend.
Mm-hmm.
Helpful?
Yeah, it's great.
Okay.
You got to cover the ears, and when, the neck with the wind, you always got to have coverage there, and that thing helps out twice, and then the extra toque on top. Got to keep the head cold. Got some new Nike boots that were fantastic.
Okay.
My boot collection is not great, but feet and ears are always the first things.
You game day guys did a great job. I noticed Coach Saban, Desmond, I noticed had the ears covered.
Yes, you got it, man. I mean, we did 4 hours. 4 hours Friday.
It's a lot.
Those guys did halftime. Got on a bird around 11:45. Little de-icing issue. Laid down about 2:30, 2:45, and had a 5:30 wake up for Saturday, and rocked out 3 hours in Columbus.
Giddy up.
Which I'm sure we'll get to.
Look, we've got 4 games, we got 4 results, and there's a lot here. I mean, the headlines are home field. What did it mean? Everything.
Yeah.
There's the questions about who got in and all the hand wringing about that. I'm trying to think. I've been thinking about it throughout the morning. Just do we attack it just in sequence? I mean, is it
sure?
Let's just start and work our way quickly through things.
Yep.
South Bend, postcard scenes, snows in the morning. First ever college football playoff game on campus. Coach Freeman joined me afterwards. I thought he was great about what it meant. I asked him how much. I said, you talk about being president and enjoying it. How much are you going to enjoy it? He goes, I'm not do as I say, not as I do, because he said he was going to watch film with Georgia, which I get. The entire game, Steve, felt like, and maybe this is too simple. You're there, I'm not. Notre Dame picks Rourke. Love goes 98, and it was way too early to call it ball game, but it felt like the kind of uppercut that landed that let Notre Dame know we're good, and it felt like it rocked Indiana. Is that too simplistic?
Yeah, because Indiana comes out and picks off Riley Leonard, which was huge, and then they start moving the ball, and then you're like, all right, they got a little rhythm here. Looks, like the beginning of the Ohio State game, and then interception, TV timeout. Love goes 98, and that place is rocking.
Well, we're saying the same thing because the pick of Rourke and the Love touchdown came after Notre Dame was picked. Like Indiana got a pick.
Correct.
I thought it was going to be the same script as Columbus. You're going to score first and let them know, hey, we're here. But then I thought when they got picked and Love went, it felt like curtains to me.
Yeah, and then Signetti comes on our show and is doing his brash stuff, and I think it's 17-3, and there's 2:39 left, and you got 2 timeouts, and it's a 3rd and 7, and you don't call timeout. That was pretty conservative. I know everybody talks about later in the game, the 4th and 10, but I noticed it right there. And they needed something to get over the top, and I get where he's coming from, where he says defense is playing well, but you need to score. And, it wasn't about not giving up anymore, but I thought it was conservative. I don't even think Notre Dame played well. That's the other thing I have. I mean, weather was a factor. It was a factor in every game. You saw guys realize what they could and could not do. You saw guys act differently. But the idea of being elusive. I mean, Love said, he was sick earlier in the week. He's like, I just needed a couple series. I was toast after the 98-yard run. And that cold air, man, gets in your lungs. Like, and you get a couple pops in you. Those hits feel different. And you're playing on a turf that's supposedly heated. It didn't feel heated on my feet, I'll tell you that. But, no, all credit to Notre Dame. The moment, all of it. It was just awesome. I woke up, Scott, like Friday morning. It's snowing, and just walked to campus. And the last time I flew into South Bend Airport, I was going into my senior year. I went to football camp there, and I went there and stayed in the dorms. And I was like, "This is a dump." Like
all due respect.
I'm serious. The dorm. It was a bed, a sink, and your closet,
like a prison.
It was, yes. And, everything was old. And I'm walking around Friday. I'm like, man, this is absolutely beautiful now. Like, the snow's coming down. Obviously, it's picturesque. But the buildings and their facilities and everything that they've invested in, it's a totally different place. And, they still get mad at me because they're like, oh, how's the crowd? How's the environment? This and that. I'm like, guys, you have a bowl, just one bowl. I went to the 50-yard line when I was at A&M for Texas A&M. I can't see the last 20 rows of the stadium. That's how big. So when you're talking about noise, I mean, you could still be great atmosphere with whatever they have now. And it was great. The light show they have now and the green lights and all that. But I thought it was a main factor. It definitely was a difference in game day crowd because Notre Dame moved their finals back. So the students would be there.
That's cool.
For that game. And, as high of an academic institution, you could do that if you're Notre Dame,
Right, I guess.
Friday lived up to the hype. It felt big, man. Like, when we walked on the field for the last hour of the show, it's like, bands playing, music's playing, teams are warming up. Like, it was big. Like, Des and I were just looking at each other like, this is what we wanted. And it lived up to the hype. Sorry, Indiana didn't play well.
The hype and the vibes, I thought, were incredible there, incredible in Happy Valley, incredible in Austin, incredible in Columbus. It was everything that I thought it would be from that perspective. As far as this game, the final looks very different. I actually saw a guy that's in, Indiana, like in the Indiana media, like, this was the closest game. Like, okay, sure. I mean, you watched the game. It was 27-3. Your coach punted down 17 in the fourth quarter. I mean, the year should be viewed for what it was, which I believe is a complete reset. Not even a reset, because reset implies it was ever this before. It's a complete change of how Indiana ought to view its football program. They've got money.
Yep.
They've shown they can make it. They were excellent. There's no shame in any of this. I saw a ton of Indiana people, and I thought it was the 100% right way to view it. Not one of them, not one, thought when the season started that they would be in a playoff game, and they were. So that ought to be celebrated. It's the old SVP and Rosillo days of, can you have a great season, right, without winning a championship? Indiana absolutely did. With that said, Cignetti can't talk that much shit and then be coach that meek. You just can't. There's no fifth quarter. There's no sixth quarter. He managed with his, like, from the minute he got on the mic, I'll give him this, he's been consistent. From the minute he got on the mic in Assembly Hall when he took the job and started screaming, everybody sucks, and then went out and actually beat Michigan, he's been consistent. Like, he's been who he is, which is a very confident and successful coach. But, man, Saban, to me, it's very telling for Saban to poke him the way he did. Like, I didn't tell you to talk all that shit. I don't know. When are we allowed to cuss on game day? Apparently, that's just a new thing.
It happens.
Okay.
I don't cuss.
I know, but I
probably will.
Yeah, the joke used to be with Steve when we're on ESPN too. Oh, you can cuss. Well, now you can just cuss anytime you want. But when Coach Saban said that, I thought that was very telling. Like,
it
wasn't like he was lecturing but he was saying, hey, talk a lot of crap. And in doing so, this underdog story that I think America would generally love, I think you didn't create a lot of goodwill there. And there are a lot of people, myself included, they're like, how do you talk this much crap and then punt? Like, you talk about, like, I need a wheelbarrow for my balls, and then you're punting?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Whatever. It's just talked way too much to go out like that, in my opinion. And then in the end, when you get an onside kick, and it's like, you know what? If you're a little more aggressive, who the hell knows?
Yeah.
But it was a great year for Indiana. They're already getting folks in the portal, and they'll have to get their quarterback situation figured out moving forward. I'm with you on Notre Dame. I don't think they played great, but I do think that defense is real. That Indiana offense came in averaging 43. They had 3 until those last onside kick score. And it'll be an absolute bloodbath with Georgia. Those two defenses, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, I can't wait. I mean, I didn't even see any of the lines or the over-unders, but I can't
started with
imagine.
Notre Dame being favored, and then Georgia's now a small favorite, I believe.
Yeah.
I believe that's how it went.
Is the total in the 30s? It can't be high.
I want to say it was low 40s, I believe. I don't remember. I'm making this up, but that was my guess. Maybe 40?
44 and a half.
That's the number I thought I saw, 44.
Seems like a lot.
Okay. So great scene, great vibes.
Awesome.
We move on.
Yep.
SMU Penn State. It looked cold. Penn State's offense didn't do really anything early.
No, I loved how SMU's defense played.
And I loved how SMU's offense started. They went with tempo. It looked like it bothered Penn State. They got a 4th and 1, and Jennings has a guy open. And he's got from the hash to the corner. And if the ball's better, it's 7-0 SMU. And it wasn't. And they didn't instead of landing the first punch, now it ends up being a pick six, and then another pick six. And Jennings just wasn't as good. He needed to be the guy he's been throughout the year, and he wasn't. Penn State's defense was awesome. Penn State's crowd, all these jokes about a whiteout, like that place is a really difficult place to play. That's a great, passionate fan base. And SMU wasn't competitive. Their poor left tackle, Abdul Carter, lived in the backfield, but he's got company with that. Number 11 for Penn State's been destroying offensive lines all year. It's just that game felt like kind of what I was afraid it might be.
Yeah. We had Kevin Jennings on the show, and he comes out, and he's already blowing in his hands pregame, and I'm like, oh, boy. And we asked him about the weather. He said, nah, we're good. We practiced for it. We asked about the crowd noise. We're good. Communication's good. Coach has done a good job. I hear him in my headset. We're all good there. And then Kirk and I are talking to each other. He's like, where did they play? I'm like, at Stanford, at Duke, at Virginia, and I forgot their other road, at Louisville is a tough place. I'm like, they don't know what they're getting into here. Like, this is going to be bad. And I give them credit. They kept moving the ball, but it was just cataclysmic mistakes. The first pick six, I couldn't believe it because he never just catches and throws. And he did on that play, and it's a pick six. He's a risk taker. You see how many jams he gets him out of himself. But in those circumstances, you go back to the first 4th down on the interception or the incomplete pass, he could run for the first down too.
He could have, but I don't have any issue with throwing that because the guy's wide. His tight end is wide. He just threw it behind him.
Conditions came in a factor. It affected. So
I hear you.
It totally affected him, and I give him credit. I love with their defense. That the Penn State offensive line got to take it to them.
That SMU run defense is one of the best in the country.
Yeah. Yep.
Statistically, but then again, who'd they play? I mean, that's fair. But they're better than people knew, I think.
Yeah, I didn't even do it, and then I went on with our guy Sheehan Friday morning. He's like, did you fill out your bracket? I'm like, no. He's like, all right, cool, come on, pick a bracket. I'm like, all right, and I looked at it and I just said Oregon, Penn State. Penn State's got a lot of work to do to to get there. I know people are going to talk about their path and how easy it is. Don't worry. You're going to have to earn it in this tournament
eventually,
to play now.
But I mean, the path is what it is. You're at home against a team that didn't have a great win. I'm going to wait, and I'm going to table that until the very end. And now you play a team, and you're a 10.5-point favorite. Like we've said it 100 times. Boise, great story. They should not have had a bye.
Mm-hmm.
They're not one of the 4 best teams, and they're ridiculous. Is what it is. James Franklin went for it inside his own 20-yard line, up 14-0, and they got stuffed. That would have been, had it blown up, that relationship with their coach is, you know what it is, Penn State fans. You know what it is. And your offense hadn't done anything. Your defense gave you 14 points, and you went for it and gave SMU an on-ramp, and they just couldn't take it because Jennings threw another pick inside the 10-yard line. But I thought, what are we doing? You and I joke about the analytics. Anytime there's a 4th down, the next time ESPN Analytics says punt will be the first time. The analytics department apparently are like a 9-year-old playing Madden. Let's go for it. I couldn't believe that they did that, and it didn't matter in the end. And then at some point, the dam's going to break, and it's what? It's 28-0, and it's curtains. Again, I'm going to hold off on the SMU Indiana piece of getting in as we move forward. The best game, the most entertaining game by a mile, was Clemson in Texas. Not surprising to me when you think about this, Steve. That's a program that's been in this a lot. Now, have these guys? No, but Dabo runs a program that's familiar with this. He institutionally, organizationally, knows how to prepare for and plan for these big moments. And they looked the part. Klubnik, I thought, was excellent. Excellent. They come out with an awesome game script. Don't blink, right down the field. And I'm thinking, here we go. But this Texas offense, Steve, that has not been a strength throughout the year, they ran it. I don't know what they end up running for in the end.
Two guys over 100.
Yeah, they two. So it's over 200.
290, I think.
Yeah, almost damn near 300 yards. That is not something you see happen to Clemson much. Texas punished them on the ground. There was a chance late where they're down 2 scores, and apparently Clemson either didn't watch the A&M tape or they had a little belief in their O-line that we can get it in from there. But the strength of Texas is its front. You've talked about it a ton. They got 10 different war daddies. They just cycle in and out. And when they got that stop to keep it a 14-point game, that was, in the end, essentially it. Texas impressed me. Their odds are now the shortest of anybody. I'm just sort of giving Cliff's notes here. I'm interested in what you saw from that you think is worth mentioning.
Love what I saw from Clemson. We did the story about Klubnik and Ewers playing in the state championship in Texas.
Really cool deal.
And talking to people, Cade has always had a chip on his shoulder because Ewers was always the guy. Always the guy. The Gatorade player of the year, the player of the year this, the player of the year that. Beats him in the state championship. And I knew Clemson was going to come in with an agenda. What could they sign up for 60? That's what you got to do when you're playing
60.
teams in this caliber.
60.
And they, a couple mistakes. The run game they got shredded. Banks came back. He was healthy. He missed the SEC title game. He was dominant in that run game. And they got Blue going along with Wisner. And
that's a lot of choices they've got back there, man.
And those are their 4th and 5th running backs.
Right.
Like, it's crazy to me.
Yeah.
How Sark has stacked that roster. So I thought Texas had the most pressure because you had the most formidable opponent coming in. When you're talking about SMU and the teams that getting in and all that stuff, I thought Clemson had a better chance than SMU did in this game. And, Dabo playing that underdog role that he loves to do. But Texas was too much for him. I'd be wary of Texas, though, because as Clemson showed, and that's the question we had about Clemson, how much is this offense going to show some evolution? You could throw it. If you got guys, you could throw it on them. So I think that was impressive.
I agree. I think those young receivers for Clemson showed out. I think that's a great sign. I mean, so much changes anymore. Hell, even Clemson was in the portal. I mean, but who you have year to year is going to change.
Yep.
But I think you and I are on the same page. Certainly from Clemson's standpoint, that was a game where you can, for a program that's been in the deep end of the pool. I felt like that showed. The moment wasn't too much for them, as opposed to SMU and Indiana that were just not competitive in games. Clemson was, and it's interesting to hear what you're saying. Like what Clemson did to Texas is frightening. The next team they play in Arizona State, though, that they're capable through the air, but that's a scatterboo story. They're going to try to run it. But they're 14-point favorites?
Yeah.
Wow. 14-point favorites. Okay. I would just be very cautious about laying that number.
Mm-hmm.
Arizona State's I think Sparky's going to be alive and ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
Our friend Matthew had on the butterscotch leather.
He did.
That meant it was a serious game. Playoff, my friend. Are we? So this is now we're to Columbus.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Couple things. Tennessee fans, God love you. You are a special, special bunch. I don't know what the number was of orange, but that's an orange that is very, very distinct. Like we had Clemson in Texas, 2 different shades of orange. Your shade is different. It's very, very noticeable. And when you turn on that game in the shoe and you're like, there had been all these rumblings social media-wise. Is it the secondary market? Is it this and that? And in my head, I'm thinking, brother, that is the Vol Nation. And they have driven north or flown north or gotten fucking covered wagons or walked. They came however they could get there. And I think it's awesome. Like their team made it. Their passion was on display. I don't know if all of them got in. I think people just come to be where the team is to have the fellowship and the brown water, whatever it is. But that Ohio State team, that's the team that they can be. They played to their ceiling, and it was fascinating to me to see the way they took all of that angst from Michigan and bottled it and played like a team that can win 4 straight games.
No doubt. To your point on Tennessee, the whole flight here, I'm still seeing Rocky Top. I heard that freaking song so much this week. It was awesome. But you could feel it. We got, we're up and at 'em. Des and I go out at 7 a.m. to tape our Sports Center hits, and we hear Desmond Howard, and he turned and looked at me. He's like, where the hell are we? I usually get booed like crazy here. And I'm like, there's a lot of orange down there, a lot of orange, and they dominated game day, dominated. And as Reese pointed out, to Ohio State's credit, school's out of session. It's a night game. It's fucking freezing. I understand it. And then AJ Hawk comes on. He's like, "Don't worry, we're gonna show up for the game. We will be there." And I'm telling you, Scott, I ain't been that hyped for a game in a long time, man. I walked down the tunnel, and it is on, and you could just feel the energy. You see all the orange, but what it did was spark up that scarlet and gray. They had so much angst, and it was just seeing that damn orange in their building. It was more than I've ever seen in a stadium that's not a 50-50 like Red River.
Herbie made the point. He's been going to games since the mid-'70s and had never seen that level of fan base. Takeover would be overstating it. But represent. You don't see representation like that. What you see is if it's a Michigan game and they'd never sell their tickets to them, but you see that little pocket of maize and blue that they're allotted. But you saw orange, not just sprinkled. You saw packs, and again,
wolf packs,
vol packs, baby, and they deserve to be acknowledged for.
Yes.
A game that, it's a bigger stadium, which means you're going to have more access.
Mm-hmm.
It's close. You can get there. But it wouldn't have mattered if it was in Pasadena, man. They're coming to support their group. And They got boat raced.
Yeah, but like pregame, we're down there, and Sawyer is on one. Like, I'm like, how many Red Bulls does this kid have before he came out? And what's weird is the CFP, the pregame is different. You have to be off the field earlier. They announce both teams with their intros from their home stadium. There's just a lot going on. So it was a tighter time on the field, and I still wonder about the Tennessee guys if they got themselves loose and, it was freezing. And I wonder if that affected the pregame when you see these Tennessee guys go out. But anyway, Sawyer, now we're getting down. The clock's running down before pregame. Tennessee's running off, and the D-line's right there. And Sawyer is talking so much shit to every single Tennessee guy, coach, player, pointing, maybe a couple B words he was calling guys.
Rhymes with itch?
Yes. And I'm like, this is nuts. Like,
I didn't dig that because that was the guy that was the maddest after Michigan, and it's like, buddy, they planted the flag on your field for 60 minutes, and you're I didn't like that, and he's a great player, but I thought that didn't. But you want to know what? There was another layer to that. Go ahead,
and that's what I was going to say is. But to me, Ohio State was the biggest wild card in the whole playoff to me. I didn't know how they were going to come out, and I'm like, it's on. Like, this Tennessee better buckle up because this thing is on. And Ohio, it was a frenzy, man. Like, you could feel the Ohio State people. They wanted to bust out. They're pissed off that there's so many of those people in their crowd, and they go down and feel it. And I know Travis Hunter won the Heisman Trophy, but good God, is there a better player than number 4 for Ohio State?
That's what I asked you about the Biletnikoff.
Hell.
That's what I asked you about the Biletnikoff. Like, with respect, Hunter's an awesome player. He's not a better wide receiver than Jeremiah Smith. I'll promise you. You know how I know? Because when they both go to the NFL, 4 will be catching passes. That's what Hunter will be trying to stop him. But I joked with Ryan Day afterwards. With Chip, I just joke with Chip Kelly, send him a text, just throw it to 4. Like, I get that you guys are really smart and you've got plays. Throw it to 4, but you want to know what? Will Howard was awesome. He threw some absolute dots to him. I want to finish what I was saying about Sawyer, though.
Yeah.
It rubbed me the wrong way, but then the more I thought about it, I thought, you know what? I thought it felt like meathead behavior after Michigan. You got beat, and now you want to fight. I felt like he showed up to the bar ready to fight. You've got 60 minutes on the other side of this, and it made me realize, this is who we're going to get tonight, which made me feel better about my head. I'm like, the Buckeyes roll this game. It felt like a Buckeyes roll game. And, Steve, it's 21-0. Like, it's like, and no, again, I've shown you the love, and I mean it, Tennessee. You're a good team. That defense, we've talked about you guys all year. It's like one of those games against Purdue, man. 21-0 with 3 to go in the first quarter. And we've seen those games through the year where, like, a ranked team comes in. Michigan State's ranked or Purdue's ranked, and they come in, and Ohio State's like, oh, really?
Yeah.
You guys ready to go? Let us know when you guys are ready. And then it's 20. I remember one year, I want to say it was Purdue came in ranked, and it was like 42 to nothing.
It was Michigan State. It was Michigan State with Justin Fields.
Right, because I remember in winters, they were given like 20, and they were ahead by 42 at halftime.
Yes.
It felt like it could be like that. And it was, and I asked Ryan Day about it afterwards, and I asked him specifically about Will Howard. This isn't a guy that's been there for a long time, but he seems to me to be someone who gets what your program's about. He gets what it is to be a Buckeye. He understood the significance and the weight of that Michigan game, and he understood how losing that one was a catastrophe for them. But he had a chance to make it right, and he did. I thought he was awesome. I thought he was great. Like, everything about the way he led, and then you have all these weapons. You have Travion, you have Judkins. You don't just have Jeremiah Smith. You have Ibuka. You have Carnell Tate. You've just got, you know what I mean? It's like one after another. It's like, oh, it's your turn. It's your turn. It's your turn. And Tennessee, once they were down, like, they're not designed to come back from down that number. And I give them credit. They got within, it's 21-10. And you're like, all right. But I don't know how long the list of teams that were beating Ohio State in that stadium were last night, but it ain't long.
Last night, no one.
I tend to agree with that.
And I do want to give credit to Nico. I thought the toughness he showed. I mean, he loses Squirrel, he loses Sampson. I mean, it's brutal. And you're
he got
sitting there.
blasted, Steve. You saw it. He got and on those cold nights, I don't know how much worse it hurts. And this is a guy that's had some head injuries, whatever.
Yep.
And he's a skinny cat, and he got blasted repeatedly.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, they brought it. That was the one thing. And when you watch Tennessee in predictable situations, their tackles struggle with protection. And from the jump, Tyleek 91 in the middle for Ohio State's defense was fantastic. Simon was all over the place. But Tennessee didn't put any pressure on the secondary of Ohio State, which we've seen Oregon do.
He never had anyone open, Steve. I can't tell you how many times I watched him drop back, and you see it's like, no. Second read, no. Third read, okay, now I have to run.
And somebody's on his back.
They couldn't put any pressure because no one was open. What do they call them? The silver bullets back there? Like that defense, the secondary through the years, they put a zillion dudes in the league. The back end of the defense, I thought, was spectacular for them.
Yeah, I mean, they just played as a unit too, and they brought the fight to Tennessee, and Tennessee wasn't ready. Took a while, got the ball 21-10, and Ohio State gets it, and it's another Smith touchdown. It's over.
Yeah, he's good.
So it was super impressive. Chip was in his bag. Nick and I were talking. What I was like, what do you think Ohio State's going to do? And he's like, they got to move Jeremiah around. He's like, he's been stationary. And I look it up. He only had 6 catches combined in the Indiana and Michigan game. He combined for 6 catches, and I'm like, they're gonna violate getting the ball to him. But just going back to him, Scott, he has like 5 different gears. There was a 4th down around midfield, or maybe
early. They were like, they just went for it, and that to me was so telling. It's like, oh, you're not stopping us, and they didn't.
And they run a shallow cross with him, and he's just stuttering, stepping out of there, and just gliding and trying to see who the guy is going to be that's going to pick him up. And that guy, as soon as he realizes it, he's 5 yards by him. And the way he could catch the ball so far outside the hash and still get upfield is mesmerizing. But the whole deal, our boy Tom Engel was there. He helped get Coach Day on the show for you. Ryan Day's about to run out in the field. Their coaches are already out there, and the music's playing, and Ryan Day's like jumping up and down with his guys. I'm like, this is their last stand. This is it. That you got another chance. How are you going to respond? And I couldn't be more impressed with how they came out and played.
I thought a lot about before and after was telling. The way they showed up ready for the fight, the way they played. Throw it to 4, who's just a freshman, which is absurd.
Nuts.
I mean, you go back to the Bruce Feldman had the whole things about just him. Like, he's a complete freak, absolute freak of nature. And what Day said afterwards was interesting. I hadn't even thought about this because they beat Indiana by a lot, but he said, to be honest, we didn't play that well in that game. There was a punt return and a pick, right? Like, no, there's a punt return that changed it. A muff punt, and then a punt return for a touchdown.
Yeah.
So they hadn't played well. They carried that offensive hangover into the Michigan game. They looked completely different. And then the way that he spoke about a lot of football left, and when he came on with me, he said, we got 3 more left.
Yep.
He said,
Before that game, it was 4.
He said, we got 3 more games. And like, now, just so Oregon fans are clear, this wasn't him, when people turn things that coaches or athletes say into like calling you out or making a prediction. It wasn't like he's saying we're beating Oregon. Hell, he's saying we're beating everybody. He's saying we've got 3 more games to play after this, which is a totally different mindset. And I think is the one that they should absolutely adopt. Like, you're you. You have this arsenal of weapons, right? You're sitting on a war chest of money and weapons, which was what makes forever, and it doesn't necessarily matter looking back, but it makes that Michigan game make so little sense in retrospect. I'll never understand what that was and who that group was. And it's a pointless thing to say, so why say it? But I think it. If Ohio State could ever convince itself to take the Michigan game and just de-emphasize it, I think they'd benefit. I really do. It'll never happen. But in what you've seen, I think, and this year was the absolute epitome of it, was how the stress of that game becomes totally unmanageable. Because there's no way in God's green earth that this Michigan team is going to hold an Ohio State team that scored 42 down. I get it. There's a pick in the red zone. You miss some field goals. It's just still, it makes no sense. But if that result leads to them playing to this level and going on a bender, then I suppose it serves its purpose. And we could joke about they'd rather beat Michigan than win a national title. Well, they win a national title, they're going to be all right in Columbus, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was interesting. Like I said, I keep saying I didn't know what to expect from them because of how catastrophic that Michigan loss felt with everything. But then talking to Herbie, and then Ryan Day comes on the show Saturday morning, I'm like, he wasn't in the rundown last night. And I thought that showed a way of turning the page. He comes on, and he's like, let's talk about the game. He's like, I'm fired up for this game. My guys are ready for the opportunity. But then Herbie talked about, before he came on, about the idea of how they were moving on, how they were getting past. He and I talked about the Stroud game against Georgia and how they came out guns blazing, and they just couldn't do it after Harrison gets hurt. And they have this senior dinner. It's called the Senior Tackle, and it's a super emotional deal. And Herbie talks about the position coach they had 22 seniors, I think. Position coach talks about the senior talks to the whole team, parents and coaching staff, and every single guy that got up there said we got 4 more games. And when I heard that, because then Kirk was like, when I was playing, the players didn't talk, and then Nick was like, yeah, I was here for 2 years. I remember that senior tackle. I was crying my eyes out. So to hear that and hear how they were taking steps, they had been here before. I thought it was a testament to Ryan as a head coach, because I mean, that thing is a pressure cooker, man. So the way they responded, I thought, said a lot, and I cannot wait to be there for the Rose Bowl. That is going to be mano-a-mano, 1A.
Well, the first game was excellent. They just ran out of time, literally a second. They called an OPI on Smith, which I thought was actually a call that you don't often make, but I thought he did it. We go all the way back to October or September, whenever the hell that was. But we get it again. Nice of the committee to reward the unbeaten Big Ten champs with a second game against Ohio State. That seems reasonable. But, hey, you're going to have to beat good teams somewhere along the way. So we have Penn State, Boise. We have Notre Dame, Georgia. We have Texas, Arizona State, and we have Ohio State, Oregon. I hope the next round's better than this round.
Here's the problem.
Okay.
This is why the seeding sucks and affects it, because now we're set up for more blowouts in the next round. If we had it seeded, you're expecting them in the first round. Now you have 2 double-digit point spreads, and then 2 1-point spreads. And they set themselves up for this because of the seeding deal with the conference champions and the way it was. So
fix it.
Yeah.
Fix
well,
it.
They can't fix it this year.
I don't mean now. It's too late.
Maybe Santa could fix it.
I know that there are smart people involved in this sport. Those smart people should just simply say, all right, we've done it once. We've seen what we got, and how can we make it better? I thought so much was said about who got in, and then the relative merit of those teams. And then the results certainly invite the question. An Indiana team who lost to the best team it played, Ohio State. Should they be in? And then they play and they're not competitive. SMU lost to the 2 best teams they played. Should they be in? They go to Penn State. They're not competitive. And in the midpoint of the day, I'm sitting here thinking, for all of you and media and all the fans that are saying, well, these are the teams that should have been in, and this was the right thing. Do you want terrible games? Is that the goal? I don't know that the 3-loss SEC teams would have been better. I think they would have been, any of them. Like, I think South Carolina or Ole Miss or Alabama goes to Penn State or goes to Notre Dame. I'm thinking the games are better. And I'm thinking that because they've shown you the capacity of going on the road and being good against good teams, where Indiana and SMU had not. But the SEC, which everybody turns into this big thing, had a team also go on the road and be non-competitive, and that was not a team that anybody questioned should they be in or not. Because what had Tennessee done? Well, they beat Alabama, so they should be in. Okay, they got blown out also. And so what this speaks to, and by the way, should take the SEC teams out and ask yourself this: if it's Miami that gets in instead of SMU or Indiana, are they more competitive? Well, their defense wasn't good, but you know who they had? A Heisman finalist named Cam Ward. I feel real safe in saying Miami would have been more competitive at Notre Dame, and they'd have been more competitive at Penn State because they got Cam Ward. But they didn't get in. So whoever the other teams that could have been in, I find it hard to believe they'd have done worse. But then Tennessee joins the party, and they get blown out. And Clemson, even though the game was competitive, it's a 14-point result. And where I land with this is that home field is a gigantic advantage. And when you get to this time of the year, we've seen it in the past with a playoff or blowouts. We see it in the NFL where teams that qualify get blown out. Danny Kanell, God love him. I mean, he trolls the hell out of the world on social media all the time, but he put something out on Sunday, and it was a video, and I listened to it, and I was ready for him to say something. And I'm like, fucking Danny, what are you doing? And then he's talking. I'm like, you know what, Danny, you're absolutely right. You can't script close games. You can't mandate close games because you want them. When you get to the playoffs in the NFL, you get blowouts because that's what happens. So I think in the end, I don't know that they could have done a better job. I don't know for a fact that other teams would have been more competitive. I think they might have been, whether it's the SEC 3 losses or a Miami or whomever. I just ask you this, Steve. What Reese said on the show about the committee moving forward, do you think that the results from the teams that hadn't beaten people will impact a similar team and has a resume like that in the future? Do you think they'll consider, I don't know, man. Remember what happened to SMU?
Yeah. The problem is how many people see. This is the other idea. Everybody said, "Oh, well, this year's committee is different than last year." But the committee's the committee. They still made a decision. And in my head, all year, I said the ACC is going to get the benefit because of what happened last year. And I get it. It's a totally different committee. But yes, I still think it. Why do we rank certain teams in the top 5? Everybody has a notion about teams. And I was firmly believing that when that happened, as long as SMU didn't get blown out, that they were going to get 2 in. And as far as the game, yes, I do think the committee, it affects, and it will. And I think the process is going to change as far as the buys and all that. But, yeah, to the people that just want all these close games, man, like, sorry it doesn't work out like that. Sorry, man. Like, it
isn't scripted. It isn't
correct.
Like, all the people that it's rigged, it's scripted. No, it's not. It's if it were, we'd have had 4 close games and we had none.
And I say it all the time, and it hurts because I was there for Indiana Friday night, and I was there for Tennessee, and it happened to SMU. Also, when you get on that stage, I said it to every coach, player that I know on those teams: play well, and everything will take care of it. Take care of itself. They didn't play well. They got to that stage, and whether it was all these different factors, injuries, a lack of execution, play call, whatever, they didn't get to their max. And that's why I always hurt, because that's what happened to me in my last game. And that's what I always think about. And when you get this stage, what do you do with that opportunity? And it sucks. Those guys are going to remember it for the rest of their lives that they weren't able to capitalize on that opportunity. That's the way I look at it. And all the people that want overtime games, screw off.
I lost to Wheaton. You want to hear about that game?
On the bump?
Yeah, we had a 4-3
They left you
lead.
on the field?
Yeah, we had a 4-3 lead. Had a chance to get a double play. We errors, some unearned runs.
By who? Give me names. Give me names. Come on.
Everybody's trying their best.
You remember him. I know that.
I know the play.
It's sick. It's so sickening.
Yeah, we lost to Wheaton. I threw a ridiculous sidearm curveball, just an absolute slop, just pus.
Puss ball?
Absolute pus on a plate. Pus on a plate, please. Here, because I was convinced that I had all this. Whatever. The point being, when you get to that moment, you want to have your best, and yeah, these teams did not. I'm sick of the people complaining about the people that got in, and I'm sick of the people that lecture those that have something to say to just don't tell me to just enjoy the games. I would. They weren't enjoyable. The games weren't very good, but you can't just mandate that they're better because sports are played by human beings and there's a million things that impact it. The elements certainly did. Great home crowds. Notre Dame's an excellent venue.
Oh, awesome.
Penn State's an excellent venue. DKR's an excellent venue. And the shoes, like the value of home field, I think understanding and weighing that moving forward is huge. We had Tim Hasselbeck in. We always have him on Sunday nights. We had him for Saturday night this week to talk the 2 NFL games and the college games. And I asked him, and I thought he had a great point, but the challenge is how do you execute it? His thing is, look, for the committee's got to be asking itself, who do we believe can go to these places and compete? When you're looking at this grid, you're saying, all right, so we're going to send SMU to Happy Valley. Mm-hmm. All right, where have they played? Then you go through these. Duke, Stanford, Virginia, like they haven't seen anything like that. And then you add in the element of the cold. And then if you're being reasonable and you say, is this a team that seems well positioned to go compete in that situation? All right. If the answer is yes, fine. But I get that they don't want to be in a position, Steve, where they're doing too much. What do we think?
Correct.
As opposed to what do we know? And so I think I land on what do we know when you've demonstrated that you can go on the road and win games. Miami of Florida did it early in the year in the swamp. That was 100 years ago. But they showed it in that spot. A team like Alabama goes down into Baton Rouge, and they've shown you that they could do that. The counter to that is, they've shown you they can go to Norman and lose. And we said that loss needed to be penalized. I'm not anti-penalizing losses. I do think when you show that you can win big games, that matters. But teams in these gigantic conferences don't necessarily get a schedule that provides them opportunities to show they can win big games. But when you only have lost the big games you got, I think that's hard. Now you're guessing that they're going to be able to beat a good team because they haven't shown you they did. They right? Is that fair?
Yeah, but there's got to be some deserving aspect also.
Meaning what? Like just the bulk of
like
all
Tennessee getting in over the 3-loss SEC teams. They avoided the cataclysmic loss.
And they beat Alabama. There's no way you're putting right.
Being a third loss. Like
right.
Like, when you start getting down there, they're all flawed.
But that's the point that I think needs to be made as it relates to SMU and Indiana, where these teams that everybody they shouldn't be in. Okay, well, no one had a problem with Tennessee, and they got boat raced also. So all of these things just speak to the fact that, to Cannell's point on Twitter, you can't script good games. You want them, but they don't necessarily happen. And now if we get people getting trucked in the next round, then I think the seeding thing will definitely get looked at. I think it should get looked at anyway. Just because you can take something that ought to be really, really good and compelling and give it a better chance to be. You can't mandate it because, as we saw, I was so psyched for these 4 games. And look, I enjoyed the hell out of watching the scenes, and it was so cool to have it. It's so cool to have the elements be a part of it. But the games were they were largely non-competitive games.
Yeah, I'm lucky enough to be at 2 of them. I loved it. Loved it.
Right on.
I have an honest question.
Okay.
with being at those games. Who won the NFL games? I have no idea. There was 2 games, right?
Yeah, Kansas City beat Houston.
Close again?
Mahomes on the bad wheel, took off running for a touchdown early. He looked good. Unfortunately, Houston lost Tank Dell again to another season-ending injury. It was awful. C.J. Stroud in tears. It was heavy, man. Like Tank's a tiny guy, and he lost to a season-ending injury last year. His knee was one of those awful injuries that you just knew it immediately. It was heavy, and he actually caught the ball for a touchdown, which made it at the point 17-16. But Kansas City ends up winning by 8. Baltimore beat Pittsburgh by 3 scores, 34-17, and it was
really
kind of a back and forth game. They ran it for over 200, ran it for 220. And so I asked Tim Hasselbeck, did they, after losing 8 of 9 games, was it a different game plan, or were they just better at running the game plan they like to run? He said, no, they just ran their stuff better. Sometimes in my brain, the simplest question is just like, did they do something different? No, they did what they did, but they did it better. And I think those are 2 teams whose identities are pretty well established, right? Like, we're not just going to wake up one Saturday and go, hey, let's run a bunch of tricky shit. No, let's just give it to the sledgehammer and just keep pounding you with it. And Henry ended up for $162. They ran for 220. It was a 17-all game. Baltimore scored the last 17 of the game. So now Pittsburgh, kind of an interesting kind of spot for them, right? They lose to Philly. They lose to Baltimore. They have a Kansas City game on Christmas Day. And then they have a Cincinnati game, which the zombie Bengals might be in the mix. They got a very narrow path, but if that path's still alive, you're going to have to play the zombie Bengals potentially to try to make the playoffs. So it goes from, hey, we got firm grasp of our division to,
no, you don't.
You might be a wild card team on the run. We shall see.
Did you miss watching games with no fantasy implications?
I mean, in my brain, here's what I've done. I've convinced myself that I won that game that I lost by 4, and so I'm just going to pretend like this game today is what it is.
You're fucking sick in the head.
So
you got to be like Ohio State and turn the page,
or just pretend. It's fantasy. I can do whatever I want. Dress up in a wizard outfit in my. Actually, you know what I got to do? I got to get to doing some rapping because we got a window.
You coming
here
out with
where
an
it's
album?
just me. Rapping present, Steve.
Got it.
It's not MC SVP on the mic.
You don't just throw it in a gift bag,
dude. It's for the kiddos. So I'm gonna make use of the window. I'm gonna throw on a little quad box. Get to seeing what we got going.
So they can't watch games with you because all their presents are there.
Well, they're not here at the moment, so I got to make use of the time while they're not here to try to get some rapping done.
One last thing.
Please.
Everybody's bundled up on the sidelines before the game.
Uh-huh.
No one knows who each other is. Like a hat, like ski, like everything, gloves, whatever, scarves. So this gentleman comes up to me. He's like, hey, I love what you do. You and Scott, and then you do to college. I'm like, thank you. Appreciate it. And he like takes his hat off, glasses, scarf. Coach Cutcliffe. Huge fan. He's like, you know what I love that I'm not coaching anymore? I get to watch y'all.
Coach Cut.
He was nicest guy in the world. I didn't want to bring up that he's still in Bad Beach, but because it was cold. He looked cold, and he was off and running. But super, super nice guy.
Well, that's great. The Coach Cut is part of our show because
I know.
The montage, the Belk Bowl will never leave the montage because as we reach the most wonderful time of the year, interspersed, sprinkled in, your various Gasparillas and thises and that's, but nothing could ever top the calamity that was Cincinnati and Duke in the Belk Bowl. On Duke for internal organs. Lost him. Coach Cut's face is right there, like
right there.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it was super. I've never heard a bad word about that guy, and it's awesome.
I never heard a bad word about Lambeau, which is where you are.
You got to see this tubing park. It's right. I'm looking out the window right now. People
you won't bundle up and go tubing.
Hell no. I'm retired.
How do you retire from tubing? You just put your ass in the middle and go do your
I have one
gravity.
College basketball statement.
Go ahead.
Actually, two. What the hell happened to Kentucky yesterday?
Ohio State got Bradshaw back.
Okay. And Maryland is the best team in the Big Ten in men's basketball. I said it.
I say nothing.
Okay. Well, I'm saying it.
Okay. I mean, we'll see.
Squad.
I got some options. Keep their head down, keep working. We'll see. Getting ready to hit the road, head out west for
conference games.
Yeah, Big Ten road trip to Seattle and Eugene, as it was written in the holy text. Sure, okay. We'll see you for Countdown from Lambeau and snowy Green Bay Monday night. I believe we're going to bang out a Tuesday Christmas Eve pod.
What?
Quick one. I believe me. We're going to land and
we got to deliver cookies.
Bring your cookies over here. Well, listen, we'll knock it out quick. Knock it out quick. Steve, we're in the content business.
It's Christmas Eve.
It is.
It's a bigger deal than Christmas Day for me. Sorry.
Okay, well, when you bring just give us, you don't have to sign up for 60. You can sign up for 5. Just a quick 5 minutes on Lambeau. Listen, you're a venue guy.
Okay.
I think
we're getting home at 4 a.m. What time are we doing this?
We'll talk about this offline. It won't be early, but whatever time works for what your cookie delivery, because I'm with you. That is, look, Christmas Eve is a hell of a lot more important than this dumbass pod. Although apparently we've been nominated for an award.
Well, that's fake.
No, real
There's
award.
No podcast. Who's voting on those? The committee?
Yeah, the committee. And by the way, I saw New Heights on there, and I sent Jason a note. I said, "Suck it, New Heights. We're coming for your ass." He got 100 million.
I was going to say, our NIL's our collective's a little smaller.
Here's your certificate from the podcast committee voters. We're good. I'll be over here in my yacht.
Ugh.
All right. Well, I don't know. Maybe we won't do one, because what you're saying right now makes me like, what are we doing with our lives?
Yeah.
You got cookies to. I get it. Maybe it'll just be me. It's way more convenient for me.
You should just sing carols. Put the Yule log on and sing.
Shout to Josh Groban. The version of Oh Holy Night with him and Jennifer Hudson together. Ridiculous.
Ooh.
Ridiculous. They had a special on the other night. You had the playoff going. You had that TV special. That was a fun one. All right. I'm going to go watch Football Rap Presents, and theoretically we'll see you Tuesday on the pod. Monday we'll see you from snowy Green Bay. Steve's going to go take a nap.
Oh, get your ass to Lambeau.
I'll see you soon.